Hi, I'm Hilary Reyl, and this is my young adult novel, Kids Like Us. So, Kids Like Us begins with a teenage American boy named Martin speeding through the French countryside on a train. Martin has never been to France before, but his father's French, he speaks French, he cooks French food. His favorite novel is a 19th century French novel. So he has spent his whole life picturing this place, and he feels like he's sliding into a deeply imagined world. He's about to spend 2 months here with his mother, who is on location for a film shoot in a small French town in the countryside, and he is going to go to the local high school. And Martin is very excited. He's also nervous because he's on the autistic spectrum and he has always gone to special needs school. So for the first time in his life, he's going to be with neurotypical kids. And as he speeds through the countryside, he wonders if he's going to fit in and how this experience is going to change him. On the first day of school in France, Martin sees a girl who makes him think of a character from his favorite French novel, a book he's obsessed with called Swan's Way, which is the first volume of Proust's In Search of Lost Time. She's Gilberte, and he thinks he's destined to fall in love with her. But it's not quite so simple. As he gets to know her in reality through a series of often painful revelations, he comes to see that she's not, in fact, Gilberte from his book, but a real girl named Alice who comes from a very different socioeconomic background than his imagined heroine. And as he comes to accept her, and she comes to see him for who he is, a boy with an amazing vision and a deep sensitivity, they reach out across this neurological divide and sort of meet each other. And ultimately, it's their difference that amplifies their romance. Well, through my life and my research, I've become fascinated by the very different ways that people on the autistic spectrum will take narratives to use to organize their experience. These can be books, movies, TV shows, train schedules, anything you can imagine. And it's just amazing the way that they're able to use them to understand experience. For Martin's best friend, Layla, it's Downton Abbey that helps her understand social interactions. And for Martin, it's this book. It's Swan's Way, the first volume of Proust's In Search of Lost Time, which is essentially a book about a grown man trying to recapture his past. And it's really about everything. It's about memory, it's about time, it's about the power of the senses. And Martin listens obsessively to the narrator's favorite music, and he quotes passages in his head. And so ironically, it's his rich fantasy life within the pages of this book that allows him to live beautifully in the real world. To me, reading and writing are so much about trying to imagine what it's like to be a person different from yourself. And empathy is something that we strive for but can never quite achieve. In some ways, it's a kind of faith, and writing and reading sort of reach toward empathy without ever quite getting there. In a perfect but impossible world, we would all be able to inhabit one another's experiences, but we can't quite. All we can do is try. And this is demonstrated for me in the book when Martin makes the analogy between being autistic and being gay. And he says, neither one of these are things that need to be cured. They're just ways to be in the world. And then he stops and thinks and realizes it's an imperfect analogy because so much of neurodiversity is about communication, not just asserting your identity. And so it's more subtle than that. And yet he's trying to understand himself by imagining what it would be like to be gay. So we've all felt isolated in our own perceptions. We've all had that experience. Does that mean that we know what it's like to be autistic? Probably not. But does it mean we can try to imagine it? It does. And so for me, that's what empathy is, that act of trying to imagine.